that the people who are coming in to see me are dealing with stress-related problems. I wanted to, instead of dealing with the headaches and hip pain that resulted because of all the stress that happened because of how they've been dealing with the divorce or the grief of a lost loved one, I wanted to go into history. Instead of dealing with the end stage of that stress, I wanted to go up and deal with the upstream root cause. This search, if I could make a long story short, essentially the root cause of the root cause historically behind most of our problems in relationships and health, I've discovered, is an attachment trauma in our history, which each one of us has suffered in our own unique way, which is personalized, but it's universal to all of us. And I discovered that attachment traumas from our primary caregivers, whether you were adopted, whether you had foster care, whether there was abuse, whether there was separation, all trauma really is separation, causing us to separate from ourselves. That's the primary wound. And I became obsessed with teaching people, first of all, working on that primary wound within myself, but then teaching people how to recognize their triggers coming up, where they're coming from, so they could take responsibility to resolve the core primary attachment trauma, which is detachment from self, within each trigger, within each anxiety, within each health issue, within each relationship problem. And so it's informed, this obsession with going upstream to the history has now led me to become, talking about traumas. And then when we go into the history of your trauma, we realize it wasn't even about your parents either. It was about their parents. We got to go back in history.
That is so fascinating, Dr. Nima.
Yeah.
So you're saying that generational trauma, I could be experiencing something that my great-grandmother or great-great-grandmother had as well? Can you explain
are
that?
experiencing it.
How does that happen?
Well, let me give you an example. It's a very classic example. If your parents were born, in the Ukraine during the war, where there was famine and starvation because of the dictatorship, Ukrainian, in that wartime has the children feeling this deep scarcity of, we don't know when the next meal is going to be. If you survive that, and then you come to America, Canada, wherever, and you have that in your you have that in your epigenome, like your body has your physiology has adapted to that, even though you might be in your 50s and 60s with kids, if 40s, for example, having kids, you still have the stress of the famine in your body. And so you might raise your children, with a different relationship with food, constantly, you got pushing it on them, right? For example, you got to finish and then the child then feels the anxiety that the parent felt, even though the child didn't go through that experience, it was downloaded to them.